it was the craziest thing ever. The whole story that, we made the CD in the year 2000 and we were 10, 11, 12 years old. And it was my best friends and I. And we were making all kinds of stuff like movies on our handy cam and choreographing dances and writing songs. And we wanted to be the Spice Girls or Destiny's Child. And we asked two of the girls, Janet and Mary, their mom is a self-produced musician, and she had converted her guest studio into a recording or guest room into a recording studio. And so we went to her being like, we want to record our songs. We wrote these pop songs. And then she rearranged our songs to go with these German tracks that her friend had sent her from Berlin. And the outcome, as you've heard, is really strange and pretty dissonant sounding. And I think at that age, we thought it was so embarrassing because it wasn't pop. And it was us earnestly trying something, and when you're at that age, we just like went into junior high and we are like, that was so embarrassing. We can't ever show anybody, we can't ever talk about it. Then to 2020, 20 years later during lockdown, for however it ended up on the internet, we still don't know. For people to connect with it and like it, and there was still this little girl part of me that was like, this is so embarrassing that anyone's heard it, and what is happening? And then all the events that started to unravel, like Numero Group, this really cool record label, calling us and saying we want to sign, etc., and release you guys on vinyl in stores. Just more shocking stuff that happened. I think our Douglas McGowan at Numero Group, he had said to us, you might want to consider, if you have old footage, getting it together for a documentary or something. And I was like, do I have old footage? I have feature films and music videos. I have so much. Um, and so when I was talking to my really good friend Barry Rothbard about it, and he's a filmmaker and writer and actor, and he was like, I think we could do this ourselves. And so there was a strike happening. I bought an FX3 camera and we were like, let's do this right now. And we got the band back together. We started documenting things, and it was such an adventure because we didn't know what was going to happen. And it was like we went into this portal where we like went back to 2000 and reconnected with each other.
It's such a special film. I just love the way you organize the movie and your directorial style. And I was wondering, like, how did you make that decision to do it yourself versus hire someone else to kind of tell the story?
Wow, thank you. That's really nice. Because at first I was like, okay, let's talk to our friends that are documentarians and they can direct it. And I remember Barry was like, you could direct this. This is your story. And I was like, oh, but I've never directed anything. Like, could I? And my husband Miller and all the eccentric girls, all of our friends were like, you should direct it. And I was like, they're like, you've been doing this our whole lives. Like, you've been filming stuff and organizing stuff and documenting stuff. And I was like, I guess why not? And it felt so low stakes because we really, Barry and I talked about a lot how we didn't want to get anyone, any big, production companies or anything involved, because we really wanted to keep it intimate and honest and to kind of have full control over what we wanted to do and talk about and say. And that was challenging. We had to do everything ourselves, but I'm so glad we did it that way because I really felt empowered to be like, okay, this is how I see it, the way I did when I was 11. But I'm an adult woman now. And I can be like, we're going to go do this and we're going to take a voice lesson and we're going to write a song. And everyone was like, yay, okay, we're down. And also, another thing I'm really proud of is I wanted to tell an honest story about girlhood. And girlhood's complicated. It's fun and wacky and cool and dark and complicated. And us etc girls had a long talk about how we were like, we're gonna be ourselves and we're gonna be honest, and we don't need to look perfect and we don't need to try and be somebody. Like, let's just be ourselves and people can film it and we'll see what happens. And I'm really proud of them for doing that.
That's amazing. It was just such a fun film, and yet y'all were so honest and vulnerable. I just felt so connected to y'all because I think I'm the same age as you are. So growing up in that time, it was just like looking back at life and being like, wow, that what a time capsule of a time, you know?
You were there. You were
Yeah.
there. And wasn't it crazy? Like, did you ever make movies or music or
Oh,
anything?
mm-hmm.
And TikTok didn't exist, the internet didn't exist in the same way, so it was never for anyone.
Hmm.
It was just to do it. And what a special thing. I do feel like it's hard for kids now to just be free to do that because they're so aware of how it will be received and judged, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, so I got all these old tapes and converted the footage to digital. And so there were days where I was just watching all of our old stuff, which some of it is we cannot share because we will be canceled. But it was an experience because I was like back in the room with us and it's, cringy and uncomfortable and embarrassed. All these feelings kind of come up where you're like, whoa, we were weird kids. I mean, I think this whole thing has felt like a bit of revisiting that kid inside of me and being like, because back then I was like, I'm not good at anything. I'm not special. I'm an unremarkable person. And now to be an adult and say, actually, you are special. I am special. Come on this journey with me. Like, look at what we're doing. It's been so fun and cool. And I think the thing I was most impressed with us by when I watched our old movies was like we made these feature films that and I talk about this in the movie where it's a very weird recurring theme where there was a loser and a popular girl and the loser gets a makeover and then she becomes popular but turns out she's secretly a gang member there to kill the popular girl and I don't know, it's an amalgamation of horror movies we watched and teen movies we watched but we had like running jokes and character arcs and reveals and costumes and location. My mom would like take us to scout locations like the bowling alley or whatever. And I'm just so impressed. We were like 10 or 11 years old. At that age, 10, 11, I
Hmm.
think is a really special time if you're lucky enough to have a good childhood where when I was that age, I was like, I have an idea. I'm a genius. Let's do it. And then around 12, 13, you start to become aware of the opposite sex or your peers or anyone judging you and being perceived and not wanting to be weird. And so that's really, really special time before you're self-conscious for me as like I'm an actor for a living. That's like my business now and making films and it's a business and there are a lot of businessy things to do. And as you grow up, you have to grow up and going back there, making art for the sake of it, writing a new song, dancing around, just being like, what if we were just creative to have fun? Was so it was like I was back in that 11-year-old energy that was unselfconscious and I've
Hmm.
really brought it back with me to business because I'm like that's how I want to feel. I want to feel free and in touch with that unselfconscious part of myself that's making movies with my friends in my house. Like that's how this should feel.
So, like,
I think so.
looking back at this project and what it's become now, what do you think is going to be like the lasting legacy of etc.?
Oh my gosh. I don't know because I'm like right now I'm working on a scripted version of the movie
Oh, fun.
and who know, it like has many legs. We're gonna do a new album, so there's all these new things that keep happening. So maybe it'll go on, and in 20 years we'll look back at this moment. But I I really I think two things really stand out for me. One that I think creativity is so important for the sake of creativity, period. Not doesn't have to be your job. And I don't think all of us would have done this if it wasn't for a documentary and we're doing it for a purpose. But I hope that people feel after watching this that they could do that with their friends, not for anything, just to do it. Like, what if you got your friends together and filmed something or wrote a song or made up a dance? That's so important because you do that as a kid all the time. And then I don't know what happens when you become an adult, you feel like you're not allowed to anymore or something. And that
Hmm.
sucks. So that's important to me is connecting to creativity. And then I think just I we grew up in a time where there were a lot of movies about boyhood, like what it was like to be a young boy. We had Now and Then, which is one of my favorite movies ever. But there really wasn't a lot about girlhood. There still isn't. There's not much that's true, like honest about it, because I think little girls are portrayed as really sweet and innocent. And I'm like, little girls are crazy. Little girls are like wacky and gross and funny and dark and emotional. There's so much happening. And I really wanted to be honest about that in this movie and to portray that and share that. And so I hope that it connects to people and that is seen, you know. I hope it gets people can see it.
I think it's definitely super effective. I think people are gonna love it. Why was it important to bring this movie to South by Southwest?
Well, you know, it's really kind of the perfect festival because they appreciate drama and comedy and music. And so I was like, everyone I've told this about when we were shooting the doc still, and I was like, I'm making this documentary with my friend. Everyone was like, that sounds like a South by Southwest doc. And I was like, it does, doesn't it? So I was just, when we got in, so shocked that we, I don't know, manifested this, that this was real, this is happening. And I've been a couple times as an actor, but I've never been as a director. This is my directorial debut, and so it's a whole different experience. And having their support, Claudette, who runs the film and TV part of the festival, she has been so supportive, and they were like, this film is about what we stand for and like creativity. And um it's just been so meaningful, and the fact that I get to play it in a theater for people, how rare is that? Like, that's gonna be, I mean, we haven't done it yet, so I'm like, I don't know what it's gonna be like, but I think it's gonna be really special.